Hi friends, welcome to Crack Grade B. In this lecture, we will see how to approach a descriptive question for mains RBI Grade B examinations. Since this year, exam pattern has been changed from completely MCQ based to partially descriptive for your ESI and finance. We will understand and we will see how to approach these questions. First thing that we will see is how to write the answer. So there are two ways that you can write an answer. The first way is a paragraph approach. The second one is point to point approach. Under both the approach, you introduce in 2 to 3 lines because there is word limit. So the static thing, write it in introduction. And under the body part of paragraph approach, write the main content. And use the same content if you are approaching it in point to point style, write it in bullets point and then conclude it. So under the conclusion, if you are asking about their opinion, give the opinion in the conclusion part. If they are not asking about your opinion, then write the social impact. That's it. So both the style have its own merits and demerits. In point to point approach, when you are good at data, when you want to highlight something, so you approach it in point to point style so that your answer can grab an attention, that you have written something related to data which you remember and which you are confident of, right? And you can obviously mix both of them. There is no harm doing that. We will see an example in the later part of this lecture. Next thing we will understand two things required for a nearly perfect answer. Look, no answer can be perfect. But we can obviously achieve a perfection by following few things. Like, the first thing that is required to write a perfect answer is the knowledge. Obviously, you need to know something to write the answer. That's knowledge. Then you need the smartness, the way you are writing the answer, the approach, the way you are writing the answer. That is known as smartness. The word selection, the sentence arrangements, and clearness and clarity of your thoughts. Most important. So when you mix all this with the word selection, many people might think who are very good at English may use heavy English words. Please don't do that. Your selection of words should be very simple. That is easy to understand and easy to read. That will fetch you good marks rather than using heavy words. And if you are thinking that will fetch you good marks, no. Heavy words would never fetch you good marks. Simple words can easily fetch you good marks. So using the simple word using the simple words, your chances of getting good marks. So when you mix all this, your answers become a perfect blend, right? So now when I've spoken about knowledge and smartness, what do I mean with this? What is knowledge? When you know some data points, either from budget or from economic survey or from any current affairs sources, you write it if it is related to that. For example, PM Atmanirbhar Bharat Swasth Yojana. Under this scheme, government has an outlay of rupees 64,180 crore. Government will spend it in over 6 years. So this is something that you know. And when you know this thing, you write it, mentioning the source as per the budget or as per the economic survey, you write it. That will show that you have clarity in your mind for that particular topic. And what do I mean by smartness? See, smartness means many things. So just by knowing this data doesn't mean that you would write a perfect answer. Smartness means the selection of words, how you arrange sentence, and how do you arrange the overall thing. And when you are writing this data, I would suggest you to write it in bullet points so that the reader gets an attention. Write the data only when you are confident that whatever you are writing is correct. Else, do not write any data. What you can do if you don't remember, for example, say you don't remember 64,180 crore, but you remember the amount is somewhere near to 64,000, use the approximation. The government has the government has kept aside approximately 64,000 crores and will spend over the period of 6 years for PM Atmanirbhar Bharat Swasth Yojana. So, in this way, you can write the data as well, where you don't remember the exact amount, because there you will find many data in budget and economic survey, and it is almost impossible to remember each and every data, and you never know what you need while you write an answer. So you can use approximation if you are doing your revision perfectly. Then when we have seen this, let's see an structure of the answer. We have almost discussed how an answer should look. Again, I like to sum it up. In introduction part, write the static information about whatever they are asking. For example, you are writing a question related to management. So if you remember the definition, write it. If you don't remember, no problem, because management is a static topic, but there are n number of definitions for topic say leadership. Leadership has multiple definitions. If you remember one, write it. But if you don't remember one, there is no problem. Just write 2-3 points about what is leadership. What do you mean by leadership? That's it. You don't have to remember the things, just what is there in your mind about the leadership. You can write it in the introduction part. Next comes whatever they are asking to explain in the question, you write it in the body part. Then point out some data that you remember from budget economic survey or any government schemes that we have already discussed. If they are asking about your suggestion or opinion, conclude with that. If they are asking to explain, then conclude with the social benefits attached to it. So if there is no opinion, like explain briefly the steps undertaken by the government to tackle COVID-19. So the answer will be, so your answer will be focused on Atmanirbhar Bharat package that government has announced from time to time. So they are not asking about your benefit, but when you conclude, you can mention the social impact that you have created, that the government tried to create while announcing all these schemes. So that is how you should conclude an answer. Then let's see an example. Explain contract farming in context of new farm law 2020. Look, so before I start explaining the answer, let me explain you what is contract farming. For example, this is a businessman. His name is Ram, and he is the manufacturer of flour, right? So what is the raw material that he would need? He would need wheat as a raw material. And who produces wheat? A farmer, right? So what will Ram do? Ram will go to this farmer and ask, after 3 months, I will buy all your produce at say 20 rupees per kg. And the farmer agrees and says, yes, I will give you. So there is a contract between both of them. How Mr. Ram is getting benefit? He is least worried about the supply because he has already made the contract. He is least worried about the price change because he has already fixed the price at 20 rupees per kg. And how this farmer is not worried about this contract, because he don't have to think about selling his produce. Whatever he is producing in his farm, he is selling it to one guy, that is Mr. Ram. So both of them are satisfied with their needs. And this type of arrangement is known as contract farming, right? Now, the question is, explain contract farming in context of new farm law 2020. So what you can do is, whatever I have explained here, you can write it in the introduction part. What do you mean by contract farming? Once you do that, because this question is asking about the context of new farm law. So we will have to see the background first to understand what is new. So let's see the background. In the background, what we can mention is about the Indian Contract Act 1872 and the APMC Act 2003. We can write it in background, right? Then what we can write? The new thing. First we have discussed what is contract farming, then we have seen the background, then we are coming out and we are seeing what is there in the new law. Then we will see the context. So all these things you can write it in the new law, whatever government have changed or proposed to change. Then in conclusion part, you compare both the situation, what was there earlier and what is there now, and you conclude by this. Right? Look, I'm not reading all the point because I'm just explaining the outline of this answer. You'll get the PDF. Don't worry about it. Okay, now let's see another example from your finance. The question is discuss the relationship between bond yield and interest rates. So before we proceed with the answer, let us understand the relation first. Now consider this is a bond and this bond has some feature. The features are this bond has a face value of rupees 100 and has a coupon payment of rupees 5 and the time is 10 years. So what this essentially means is that if I want to buy this bond, I will have to shell out 100 rupees, the face value, right? And what will I receive in return is the coupon payment every year. That is rupees 5 for the next 10 years. This is what the bond promises to give back. 5 upon 100, the coupon payment divided by face value multiplied by 100. This will give me 5%. So this bond will yield me 5% interest, right? So this means that a bond pays a fixed annual coupon payment. Now when we have seen the features of this bond, let us understand one thing. The coupon payment is fixed, but the face value or the value at which this bond can be purchased will vary. So what if because of a competitive bidding, this bond is available for 110 or say 105? What will happen? The yield, the yield will come down. How? So this, let us use the same formula. Suppose now it is available at 110. Let us use the same formula. The coupon payment is 5 and it is available at 110 multiplied by 100. So if we calculate it, we will get, this will give me 4.54%. So have you seen the relation? So when the bond price is going up, the interest rate on the bond is coming down. The coupon payment is fixed. Understand that thing. So we can say the yield will vary inversely with the market price of the bond. So there can be two conditions. Condition number one, when the bond price is going up, the interest rate or yield will come down. The second case, when the bond price is coming down, the interest rate or yield will go up. So the kind of relationship that it has is inverse. Now let us see how do we write this answer. First thing, define it. What is bond yield? You will have to define it. Then in one paragraph, this last paragraph contains the same thing that I have explained you. So write it with an example and you are done with an answer, because they are asking the relationship. They are asking to discuss the relationship, and this is done. And in the conclusion part, last line, you can conclude, hence the relation between the bond yield and the interest rate is inverse. Now, you have seen this answer. We have discussed it in very short. Now we have discussed it in very short way. So word limit is an important factor. So consider a situation that you got this question, but you have to write it in long. So you write this much and compare it with the current scenario. What if you have read the news article in the past few days, you have seen that US bond yield is going up, and hence the price of gold in India is coming down. So again, an inverse relationship, because gold is very liquid metal and very safe investment. So people who were invested in gold is now running towards US bond yield. Why? Because it is paying much above what they are assuming as a return from gold. So you can explain this scenario as well if you are aware about the current situation of the financial market. You can write this and make this answer long. So before I end my lecture, I would like to mention that the first and the third highest marks achieved by our students in the last examinations, right? And we have one of the most economical and specific content for the RBI grade B and SEBI grade A at the economical price. So do visit our website and check the course and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much.